celebrates. Every show is a celebration. Richard Skipper celebrates the best in entertainment. Each show, Richard delivers the artists you love, showcasing what makes them unique. Never gossipy. The antidote to a sometimes hectic world. Now, here's your host, Richard Skipper.
Happy Monday, everyone. Happy November. Happy whatever it is that you're celebrating today. What are you celebrating? For those of you who are here for the first time, welcome. My show is all about celebrating life, celebrating art, celebrating artists, celebrating whatever it is that you like to celebrate. And I believe that we need to celebrate each and every person on this planet. There's a lot of darkness on this planet, but there's also a lot of light. And speaking of light, we have the one and only Julie Halston. Let me rephrase that. Tony Award winner.
Oh, I like that. I like hearing that, Richard. How are you?
I am doing wonderful. I mean, isn't it exciting to hear Tony Award winning Julie Halston?
Wait. Should I show it to you?
Yes, of course.
All right, hold on, gang. Hold on.
Yes.
And guess what, guys? It's actually very heavy. Here it is.
There it is. Oh my God. And there you
are.
My
name is on it. They spelled it correctly. I have heard from other Tony winners that sometimes they don't spell your name correctly. Can you imagine?
I love the fact that you are wearing sequins at 1:00 in the afternoon on a Monday.
Oh yeah.
As we're celebrating November. I am so thrilled to hear. I want to ask you, like they ask so many people, where were you when you heard that you were going to be getting this award?
I was home. Okay, so it's a good story actually. Sue Frost, who is the wonderful Tony Award-winning producer of Come From Away, she works with me on my charity event, Broadway Belts. She's like an advisor to us, and I'm friendly with her, and she's been such a good inspiration. Anyway, she contacted me and said, "Hey, we are trying to put a panel together about reopening of Broadway, and we'd love to have your input. Do you think you could have a conference call with me and someone from the Broadway League, and we'll talk about doing this panel?" So I said, great, let's get together 4:00 on a Thursday, I think it was. And I was really very busy, but I thought, that's a good thing. Put together a panel for the reopening of Broadway, get everyone's input. So we do the conference call, and I go, so guys, what do you need from me? And they said, oh, we're not doing a panel on reopening Broadway.
I love this already.
And I said, wait, what? She said, oh, no. And I thought, I'm being fired from a panel that I haven't even gotten on yet. And they said, no, we're giving you a Tony Award. And literally, Richard, for like a split second, I thought, is this the cruelest joke in the world? And I said, what? And she said, oh yeah, we're giving you a Tony Award. We're giving you the Isabelle Stevenson Award for your work with the Pulmonary Fibrosis Foundation, because you've been raising money for them for 11 years. You've been working with the Broadway community all this time. Your husband, passed from the disease. Michael Kushwara, who was the drama critic for the Associated Press, was how we got involved in the first place. And then when I realized they were really telling me the truth about this, I said, guys, I'm very emotional right now. I have to get off this phone. I got so verklempt. And they said, okay, don't tell anyone yet because we want to announce it in the press. But I got off the phone and I sat in my living room and I just cried. And then I called my agent and my manager, and we all did a conference call, and we were all screaming. One was in Provincetown, one was, I think, in Fire Island, one was in New York. We were all screaming and screaming.
Now, did any of them know about this before?
No. Total surprise for everyone. And they did ask me, they said, how would you like us to announce to the press? Because a lot of people would like to break the story, the Hollywood Reporter, Variety, Associated Press. I said, well, considering that Michael Kuchwara, the drama critic for the Associated Press, and he was a friend of my late husband's as well, since he was the person that we first heard about getting pulmonary fibrosis, why don't we give them the exclusive? And then 20 minutes later, it will go wide. And it went all over the country. So they broke the story. And the minute the story broke, my phone was blowing up. It was crazy, Richard. And I think I got like 1,200 Facebook likes and emails like in a half an hour. It was cuckoo crazy. Anyway.
But I will say this. First of all, it is well-deserved. Congratulations. And I am so thrilled because I reached out to you immediately to say, please come on my show and let's talk about this.
You did. I think it was like 2 days later or something. It was amazing. And I mean, we have sort of known each other for decades, but we've never really sat down and talked.
No, that's true.
Well, we know all the same people.
We know the same people. And I will say this, and this is not just lip service. I go to Broadway belts. My date is Ricky Kane Larimer, who we both love. If she's watching, I love you, Ricky.
Hey, Ricky.
And we're going to be at the next one live. But you, the world came crashing down around all of us on March 11th of last year. You, rather than stopping in your tracks, you embraced the world of virtual Halston, the work that you and Jim Caruso and all of you were doing. And you even did your Broadway Belt show virtually this past year. I want to take us, where were you as far as the planning stages were concerned before everything came crashing down?
Crashing to a halt. Well, this is what was happening. We did, a couple of things. Okay, so I look at it in 3 stages, almost like a rocket. You know how a rocket goes off in 3 different stages, I was doing Tootsie on Broadway. Wonderful musical Tootsie with Santana.
Brilliant. Yes.
Yeah. It closed January 5th, I believe, 2020. We were very sad because we loved doing that musical. However, I was very lucky. Scott Ellis, our wonderful director, asked me to do a workshop of a new musical with Kristen Chenoweth. I was going to play her mother. We're not that dissimilar in age, but I was going to play her mother.
It's very similar to Angela Lansbury playing Elvis Presley's mother in Blue Hawaii.
Exactly.
2 years apart.
Exactly. But anyway, and I love Kristen. I mean, I just love her. And I'm so excited about her engagement. Yes. Anyway.
Yes.
We were doing a new musical, and it's called The Brownie Project. That's not the final title. But anyway, it was about the woman who made Tupperware a household name. And Kristen played that woman. It's an interesting concept. We were doing it in workshop, and we did it for, Mike McGraw was part of it, who was also in Tootsie, and Scott Ellis was directing it. We were doing it. I believe Carol Rothman from Second Stage was involved. So we were doing this, and Kellen Blair, Joe Canisi. Joe, I can't believe I can't remember his last name. Well, I'll figure it out by the end of the show. Anyway, we did it for about a week, and then the world stopped. But before that stopped, we did do Broadway belts for PFF live February 28th, and we honored Daryl Roth, the great Broadway producer. Joe Canisian, by the way, is his name, and he's a dog.
I was there that night.
Yes, and you were there, and it was a wonderful night. Bernadette Peters was our special guest. Hello. It was amazing. We raised hundreds of thousands of dollars. It was a grand event.
I have to ask,
and no one got sick.
But I have to ask you, the auction that those nights, I've been to these things where people sit on their hands at these auctions, but for some reason, these auctions that you throw, everybody's throwing money at you. It's incredible.
I put it down to my lashes and maybe my glamour. I believe that night I was wearing an Oscar de la Renta. No, I have to say, and I don't want to get weepy about this, but people loved my late husband.
Oh,
for a very good reason. My late husband was Ralph Howard. For those of you who don't know, he was the voice of New York for 20 years on 1010 Wins. And he also worked.
Here he is.
There he is. There he is. Isn't he
incredible man, and so giving.
Yeah, and so giving. And I do think people really remember him so fondly and so well. But I do have to say, the Broadway community, Richard, the most giving community in the world and the most talented people on planet Earth. So we're very, very blessed to have the kind of support that we have. However, so we did that event. It was a tremendous success. No one got sick. It was amazing. Within 2 weeks, the world changed. The workshop stopped. We couldn't do another live event. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I have to say, I would say for about 3 weeks, I really did sit on my couch and I thought, I don't know what I'm going to do. And then we actually heard about people that we knew who passed away, like the great actor Mark Blum, who I did a lot of readings with Mark. It was a terrible time. And it was Jim Caruso who called me up and said, hey, I'm doing Cast Party online and it's happening. And I work with this tech director. She's a kid. She's not even 21 years old now, Ruby Lochner. I said, Jim, I love you. I'm not doing this. He asked me 3 times, Richard. He said 3 times, Julie, if anyone should have a talk show, it's you. Nobody talks like you. And you should have all your fun friends on this show. And I turned him down 3 times. He finally called me and said, I'll help produce it. Because I think I was just so dispirited. Well, as you know, Virtual Halston really became a hit. We did 41 episodes and thousands of people watched every week. And we had our cocktails at 5:00. And we had the most incredible guests, Andrew Reynolds, Santino Fontana, Mo Rocca, who I'm now doing Fairy Cakes with.
I know.
Bill Irwin, Louis Black, Mario Cantone, Mary Lou Hanna. I mean, come on. It was cuckoo crazy.
I was so jealous.
I know. I'm telling you. Listen, I was jealous of myself. I was like, who is that girl who got that person?
But I have to tell you, and this tells you a little bit about the kid that I was. When I was in high school, I discovered Joan Crawford's My Way of Life. Which was my Bible in high school. And for no other reason, forget the celebrities you had on the show. It was tuning in for you to read passages from My Way of Life. Do you have a favorite passage from My Way of Life? And I'll see if we have the same favorite one.
Well, actually, they're all gems, first of all. There's not one that's not. But I do have a particular fondness when she talks about parenting. And when she tied her children to the back seat. And she talks about the fact that she would make Christina sit in the front with her and she would say, "We're on the road and I can't feed the babies. You feed the babies." And, you know, and because she was literally tied them into cradles that would rock in the backseat. And she'd make Christina, who probably was, 5 years old, give the twins the bottles. And and you could just see Joan driving in this, sports car. And they would go on these trips with a medium-sized poodle. There would be a poodle in the back seat as well. Tied on cradles in the back seat with the twins. Christina was feeding them the bottles. I mean, I also love her passage about dieting and having all her pleasingly plump friends go on a diet together, and how you should all try to compete to lose the most weight. And if you lose some of your fat friends, at least you'll gain loveliness in the eyes of your husband.
That's right. And pickles.
Oh, and pickles. She loves a good, large, kosher pickle. And that was the one I read on my episode with Linda Lowen.
Yes.
On Virtual Halston. No, it's the whole thing. I would urge anyone who has any interest in Joan Crawford. There's two great books. My Way of Life, that was written by Joan and a ghostwriter, and two, Conversations with Joan by Roy Newquist, because that's the book that later came out when she was much older. And she even cops to being, having a drinking problem. And she, talks about her family background, which was pretty rough. Mm-hmm. And the fact that she hated her brother. And it's I don't know, Richard, they don't make them like that anymore.
I interviewed Christina.
And?
Well, I asked her, I did not talk about Joan. The only thing I asked her was because she has taken, God bless her, child abuse up as a cause. And I asked her if the movie, of course, hurt the cause. And she had a very interesting observation. She said the book is told through the eyes of a child, and the movie is told through the eyes of a movie star.
Yes.
So very different. They're two different takes.
Yes. Now, let me ask you this, just out of real curiosity. Was she friendly with her other siblings?
No, they were really, we didn't really talk about it, but there was a real separation after her book came out because she was really completely cut off from her siblings because of the book coming out.
Wow.
And they felt that she should have, family secrets. That
she should not
have gone, forward with this information. But, another wonderful thing, and I have had the good fortune of not only seeing you many times playing a character on stage, but my favorite character that you play, and I say this with all due respect, is Julie Halston.
Well, that's so funny because Ralph, my late husband, always said that too. He loved seeing me in shows because he loves theater, but he loved going to Birdland and seeing me do my comedy act. So.
You, are so hysterically funny. Where did the idea first come to you of reading the wedding invitations? Because that, to me, is one of the funniest things I've ever seen anyone do. And they're not made up. They are actually wedding invitations.
Word for word. Yeah. Well, believe it or not, it was all during the 1980s, which, I think for your younger listeners and viewers are probably like, wait, the 1980s? Was that the 1880s? Wait, what's happening? When we were doing Vampire Lesbians of Sodom, okay, when Charles Busch and myself and the original company of Theater in Limbo, there we were at the Provincetown Playhouse on McDougal Street in, the village, Greenwich Village.
me show this picture here.
We used to, there we are. Oh boy, you're smooth, Richard. You are smooth, baby. We used to do our shows in the Village. And a lot of times when you do an off-Broadway contract, in fact, I'm doing one now, you do 2 shows on Saturday, 2 shows on Sunday. So I didn't have time to go home in between shows. So we would all hang out in a green room. It was like, it was someone's basement, basically. Mm-hmm. And so we would try to entertain ourselves, and we'd eat our dinners together. And, on Sundays, I would always lug the Sunday Times with me because I'd like to read the Times in between the shows. And I was always fascinated by the society pages, because, being a low rent girl, I was, talk about Stella Dallas. I was always pressing my face up to the glass, looking at society people. And I always was fascinated by the lifestyles of the rich and famous, and not famous, but rich. And the society pages always cracked me up, They just were so pretentious and crazy. So I started reading these things out loud to the company of, the Charles Busch troupe. And they would howl with laughter. And they were like, oh my gosh, Peyton Wright the third and blah, 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 And they, talk about what they did for a living, which was nothing because, they were super rich and they were always like, the bride who's interested in watercoloring, things like that. And we were just howling. So it was really Charles Busch who really got me into doing my own act. He said, Irv Rabel, I just talked to Irv Rabel and I booked you. I booked you at the club. He did this without my knowledge. He booked me at 88's, the club we all used to go to in the Village on 10th Street, without my knowledge. He said, well, you got to do it now. You've been talking about doing your own act. I booked you. You got to do it. And Richard, I was terrified. And I thought, well, one thing that always made people laugh were the wedding announcements. So maybe I'll take a look. So I started collecting them. And they were a gold mine. They were a gold mine. So, and I do remember when I did finally go off Broadway with the show, that was a big highlight of the show. And I did actually read a wedding announcement of a couple that actually sent me a cease and desist order. And then I also read a wedding announcement of another couple, and the parents were in the audience, and they loved it. They loved it. And guess what? We're still friends today.
Well, I have to tell you, and I don't want to give them away, but they're a very well-known cabaret couple. Their wedding announcement in the New York Times said, and it said, the groom who is currently appearing at ... and the bride who is currently appearing at ... And they're giving away how to get tickets for their show in their wedding announcement.
I mean, hello. Hello.
Did you reach a point where people started sending you wedding announcements?
Oh, I still get them. And you know what? I'm so grateful because a lot of times, for some reason, I'll miss one or two or whatever. Somebody sent me one recently where the bride walked down the aisle with an owl instead of her father taking her down the aisle.
A service animal. It was a service animal.
Okay. Yeah. Because she's into owls. Really? Okay.
Who?
Okay. Yeah. Ooh. Yeah. What about cuckoo-ca-choo?
So I have to ask you, I mean, first of all, brilliant Charles Busch. And I read, he refers to you as his muse. I mean, how did you two first meet? And this incredible symbiotic relationship that the two of you have had over the years, and it is still going strong. How did it begin? The magic that the two of you have together. What makes this chemistry between the two of you?
Well, darling, it did not start auspiciously. So this is what happened. I went to college. I went to Hofstra University on Long Island, and there was a guy there named Bobby Cohen, and he moved to Washington, D.C., and he and I remained friends. We're still friends. And a couple of years after I moved to New York City, after I graduated from college, he wrote me and said, "Oh, I just went to the theater and I saw this guy named Charles Busch." And he knew Charles, I think, from summer camp, maybe, I don't think it was Stage Door Manor, but it was one of those theater summer camps. And he's doing a one-man show called Alone with a Cast of Thousands, where he plays female characters and male characters. And he's just great. And I think you should know each other. And I was like, "Bobby, I don't need another gay man in my life. Whatever. I don't know." He just kept saying, "No, you guys need to know each other. I think you'd be best friends." And I guess Bobby must have said something to Charles about, "She's the funniest woman in the world." And Charles was like, "I don't need some loudmouth blonde in my life. I don't, again, we didn't start auspiciously. Well, I got booked in San Francisco. Bobby booked me for a show in San Francisco, the Valencia Rose, which used to be a mortuary, and now it was a club. Charles Busch had just finished doing a stint there, and he was still there. So he saw my comedy act. It was terrible. I didn't have an act, but I did have a lot of style. He liked my style. I think I reminded him a little of Kate Thompson,
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't have a very good act. Well, we kind of met each other. I thought he was rather aloof, and he thought I was stylish but unfunny. Cut to months and months later, he wrote a little skit called Vampire Lesbians of Sodom. He wanted to do it on the Lower East Side at a club called the Limbo Lounge. He was working as a temp. It was a tough time. The AIDS epidemic was happening.
Mm-hmm.
New York City was in financial, chaos. It was a tough time. Nobody wanted to do Vampire Lesbians of Sodom with him, except like a few close friends. He needed a leading lady. He didn't have anyone that he knew what to do with. He called me up and he said, "Do you want to meet with me and the director, and maybe we could read it a little?" Richard, I was terrible. I didn't know what I was doing because I didn't understand that camp style yet.
Mm-hmm.
But he was desperate. He had no one else. And I joined the company. I was terrible in rehearsal. Terrible. I didn't know what I was doing. And I finally said to the company, "Look, guys, I know I'm not getting this. I'm not getting it. But you put me in a wig in front of 60 gay men, and I'm going to glow. I'm going to glow." Well, guess what? Opening night at 8BC. That was the club we did first before we went to the Limbo Lounge. I got in a wig. I got out there. Charles and the rest of the company couldn't believe it. I was like having the time of my life. The audience loved it. And I suddenly got the style. I understood what he was doing. And it was really through Charles Busch that I learned that sometimes more is more.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes more is not more, but sometimes more is more. And
But you needed that audience reaction to find that. Am I correct?
It is so true. I do not do well in rehearsal. I need a live audience to help me discover what I'm going to become.
You know, it's interesting. You know, Leroy Reams directed Madeline Kahn in Hello, Dolly.
Yes.
And he said, he wanted her, first of all, off book completely before they start rehearsals. And he said, there are certain bits that you need to do. And she said, I don't do bits. And she did not find any of the humor in the play. And she did not really find it until she was in front of an audience.
Yes. I have to say, I feel the exact same way. There is that creative energy, that creative frisson that happens with an audience, and it makes me come alive. And it never fails. I went through the same thing in Tootsie. I mean, it's one thing if Scott Ellis laughs or, you know, David Yazbek and Santino, but it wasn't really helping me find the character or whatever. The second we got to Chicago and I got in front of a live audience, boom, Rita Marshall came alive. And I think that really is what happens.
Well, you're brilliant as a solo artist, but you are also a brilliant ensemble player. So the collaboration process, when you are with a group of actors and it all comes together, and obviously, I mean, you're cast in a show because you are Julie Halston, especially at this point in your career. And again, you are a Tony Award winning actress. But yeah,
I'll put it up again.
You are. I mean, when you are in that process and you're saying, you know, just give me time to get there, are directors patient with you to get to that point?
Not always, to be honest. I think Scott Ellis was getting a little freaked when I was in You Can't Take It With You, because I wasn't finding Gay Wellington in rehearsal at all. And he came up with something so brilliant. He said, Julie, I'm going to give you a night, this is before previews, in front of an audience, and I'm going to let you do whatever you want. Whatever you want. Whatever you want. But you have to tell the cast that we're going to be doing this, so they're not thrown. I said, okay. And I went back to the text. Now, we're talking about one of the greatest plays ever written. You Can't Take It With You. Kaufman and Hart. And, you know, I mean, it's just classic. Mm-hmm. I went back to the text, Richard, and it said, Gay Wellington has literally was drinking a bottle of gin by herself, a bottle of gin. Now, if I drank a bottle of gin by myself, I'd be in Mount Sinai, but also I would not be able to stand up. So that night, the night that Scott said, you can do whatever you want, I literally crawled on the floor. I crawled up the staircase while I was doing that limerick, because I really thought to myself, if I drank a bottle of gin by myself, I would not be able to stand up. I would not be making sense. The audience went crazy, and even the cast was laughing hysterically on stage. James Earl Jones was sitting there howling, and I was laughing. I mean, it really became the bit. And I found it by going back to the text. I found it because Scott had enough confidence in me to find it. But I could tell he really was hoping, because in rehearsal, I was not finding it. And literally after that happened, you know, it really did stop the show every night.
But you also had enough confidence in yourself to allow yourself to go there.
I did. I had to say, Julie, you can do this. And after that night, I remember Scott running up to my dressing room and saying, you're going to do that every night. That's what you found it. You found the performance, and you're going to do that every night. And that that really, 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 really helped. I've been so lucky, Richard. I have had incredible support. Jim Carnahan, the casting agent, has been very supportive of me. Scott Ellis, Jerry Zaks. I mean, I've worked with great directors, Joe Mantello. Of course, when, Robert Horn, who wrote the book of Tootsie, writes for you, you're thrilled, you're grateful. Charles Busch, it's working.
And you have a movie coming out with Charles Busch. And
yes.
The trailer is hysterical. Charles is going to come on and we're going to talk about the film when the film is released. So I cannot wait.
It's on the festival circuit now. It's called The Sixth Reel. That's the number 6th reel. And it's really an homage to old movies, and it has a mystery to it. And the characters are quite outrageous. And it was so much fun to do. We did it in November of 2020. It was really kind of the height of all this COVID madness. This is before people were really being vaccinated en masse. Mm-hmm. And we had to follow very, very, very strict COVID protocols. But we made a movie. Mm-hmm. And Margaret Cho, Patrick Page, Andre DeShields, Charles Busch, myself, co-written by Carl Andrus. We had so much fun. Doug Plow. And we did it. No one got sick. Tim Daly. I have a little romance with Tim Daly. Who doesn't want a romance with Tim Daly? Right. And it was fantastic. Katie Huffman, Dee Hodes. Oh, Heather McRae. Heather McRae is so funny in this film. I have to tell you, it's just nutty. Richard Beacons, what a cast we had. And it was so much fun to do. And I was able to put together with Ruby and Jim a highlight reel, a virtual Halston while we were doing the film, while we were in Fishkill, New York. What? Where are we? And we were all in our separate little rooms. But you know what it showed us, and what you're doing with your show, Richard Skipper Celebrates. We learned to pivot in a very difficult time. And, creative people are creative, regardless. We know that through world wars, through pandemics, through very difficult circumstances, creative people are going to be creative. And it's not going to stop us from doing what we want to do. So that's what I was so proud of, that we were all able to continue to bring laughter and joy to other people during a very terrible time.
When did you feel comfortable enough to start getting outside of your apartment again and out into the world again?
That's a good question. I would say, I became a lot more comfortable after I got vaccinated in February of 2021. But I did on Christmas, during the Christmas holiday of 2020, I did go up to the Berkshires to see 2 of my best friends and stayed with them for a couple of weeks. And we all COVID tested regularly. We weren't vaccinated yet, but we kind of created a pod. Mm-hmm. So I would say it was in the late winter. And I did go out to dinner a few times in those places where they had heat lamps. But it was still a little fraught. Do you know what I mean? And we're in a new normal. It's still a little, I'm just reading an article, we're still worried about the winter a bit, but I do feel better. And I also feel that, all the people I know are vaccinated. All the people in the cast of Fairy Cakes are vaccinated. I like the fact that New York has been so tough and so strict. I feel that was the right way to go. And, I think our numbers show that we're in better shape than a lot of other states.
So you bring up Fairy Cakes, the show that you're currently doing. How does it feel to be back in the theater now? And of course, it's a different field somewhat. Your audiences are masked. Everyone has to be vaccinated to go to the theater. Thank God. How does that all feel? I mean, with the audience being masked watching a show?
I expected it to be a real downer, to be honest, because I was like, hey, we're doing a comedy. How is this going to work? You know what? They're laughing, and we hear the laughter. I mean, we are in a smaller venue. We're in an off-Broadway house at the old Greenwich House on Barrow Street, but we hear them laughing a lot. So I'm quite heartened. Now, I'm not doing a show in a big Broadway house. I don't know what that feels like, but I am much more heartened than I thought I would be. I really was suspicious of how this was going to work out. And I am heartened. And, people are coming forth. I think people want to, they want to be with other people. They want to do things. So I'm kind of heartened by the whole experience. And, we're in a dressing room. It's a large dressing room, but, I am with other people and we are having fun. And we, like I said, we are still tested regularly. And I just did a number of episodes of Gossip Girl. I did a number of episodes of the Sex and the City reboot, which is called And Just Like That. COVID testing, COVID protocols, very strict, very on it. And I was really very appreciative.
I want to ask about someone in your life that when I was doing my research, years ago, he actually wrote a pilot, I think, for you, Bob Randall.
Oh, yes.
Yes. And the funny thing about Bob Randall, for those of you, he wrote Kate and Allie, but he also wrote another book that I read when I was in high school, was The Fan. And yes. And I was having dinner at his house one night. This
happened to be in his house.
Yes. So I'm having dinner at his house. I'm sure you've been to his house. Did you ever go to his home?
Did I go to his home? I don't think we did. No, Harvey Fierstein and I did not go to his home.
I'm having dinner at his house, and he's got on the bookshelf The Fan in every language. And I went, oh, you must be a big fan of The Fan, not realizing that he had written the book. And of course, my friend is kicking me under the table. And then when I realized this big faux pas, but he wrote this pilot for you and Harvey. Tell us a little bit about, that happening and, and how you came so close to this series.
Well, it was a very strange circumstance. Again, you know how life is. There was a wonderful guy named Christopher Gorman, and he was a big fan of mine. And I was doing my one-woman show downtown called Julie Halston's Lifetime of Comedy. It was at the Actors Playhouse in the Village, right across the street from where I am now doing Fairy Cakes. So my life is literally full circle. And he was a big fan of my one-woman show, and he worked for CBS. So he told Jeff Sikansky, who was the big head honcho at CBS at that time, about this show. And he was like, this woman is very, very funny, and she should have her own show and whatnot. Well, I was just flabbergasted. I couldn't believe it. So I guess Jeff Sikansky came to my show, and he also liked it and thought maybe we could put together a development deal for me. My agent at the time put this development deal together, but I was not a star. I was not that well known. So they wanted me to be hooked up with someone that was more well-known. And the whole premise of the show was the same premise that 10 years later would become Will and Grace, because it was about a girl who gets a divorce from her husband and moves in with her gay friend, played by Harvey Fierstein. And Harvey, of course, was so well known and was a Tony winner from Torch Song Trilogy. And I had known Harvey a little bit, but it was doing this pilot that really bonded our friendship. And Harvey has a memoir coming out, and I think he talks a little bit about this, this part of our life. Anyway, Bob Randall, of course, was a very successful writer. And they teamed us together. We all met at Harvey's house. And it looked like this could be a really winning situation. And you know who our director was? Ted Bessel from That Girl.
Wow.
That Girl. So, however, as happens in life, Bob actually was very sick when he was writing this. We didn't know that he was sick. Mm-hmm. And he wasn't really strong enough to be working, long days, doing tons of rewrites and whatnot. And we did film it. We had this pilot. It was called Those Two. And it never went into a series. And it was a kind of dispiriting situation for me. It was my first sort of outing in the Hollywood world of like development deals and being a star and then not being a star. They fly you out first class, but you go home in steerage, as I say. And it was my first sort of real, oh my gosh, show business can be a brutal world. Mm-hmm. Because remember, I was one of the founders of Theater in Limbo with Charles Busch. We had this wonderful little family. I had this success. Again, a New York success with my one-woman show, but it was off Broadway. I wasn't in the big time, Here where I was now in Hollywood and the big time. And it was kind of a dispiriting situation. And then poor Bob Randall, he did pass away.
Yes. Not
that long after that. So that was my first kind of like grown-up experience in show business. And at that point, I was in my 30s, well into my 30s. I was married to Ralph Howard. And because at one point I thought, oh, maybe I should move to LA. And do you know what I mean? But I was married to Ralph and he was Mr. Successful broadcaster here in New York. And it did take me a while to get over that experience of like, oh, I thought I was going to be a big TV star. And it's like, oh, no, the pilot didn't go. Well, of course, most pilots don't go.
That's true. I mean? That's true.
Most pilots don't go. And anyway, that experience led me to really honing my cabaret skills and my one-person skills. And I really, really committed to becoming a top-notch comic actress raconteur. And I will say it was my late husband, Ralph, who really said, really work on this. Do this, You can be an actress. Of course, you're going to still be an actress, but really work on this. And I honed those skills very, very vigorously. And that's when I started working a lot at the clubs. And I started hanging out a lot more with Billy Stritch and Jim Caruso and Liza Minnelli and, the gang. And I was so inspired by all of them. And I still am. Billy Stritch.
And Julie, they're inspired by you.
Oh, well, thank you.
No, it's true. It's absolutely true. I want to show you something here. Look, I love this picture here.
Oh my gosh.
This is you. This is you as a little girl. And I pulled this picture up because I want to know looking back at all that you've accomplished, what would you say to this little girl?
Well, I would say, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Look at that little girl. Can you put that picture up for a second more?
Yes.
Because, that's a saucy little girl.
Yes.
She's a saucy little girl. And I like that saucy little girl. And I think in some ways her sauciness got tamped down a little as I was growing up. And I would say to her, keep that sauciness. That sauciness is going to help you. And, I would say that to every little boy and every little girl. Keep your sauciness. I can't believe that was part of me then, because I became a rather awkward preteen who did become kind of insecure and whatnot. But by the time I got into high school, the sauciness returned, and I'm really happy it did. So, yeah. I'm so glad you showed that, because it's inspiring. It is.
It's very
inspiring. I hope others, take that with them.
Now, as we wrap up here, this is my little homage to James Lipton inside the Actors Studio. He always ended his show with his questions. I'm not going to ask his questions, but I've got some random questions that I'm going to pose to you.
Okay. All right, honey.
And the first question is, what was the biggest sin that was ever committed against you?
Oh my goodness. That's a tough question. Well, no, I don't want to disparage.
No, don't mention any names or
that are deceased. But there was a teacher when I was in college who really didn't get me. And she was not encouraging. And she said to me, I don't really know how you can be in show business. She said, you have a big personality, but I don't know what you want to do with it. And she said, and I don't see you having any acting skills whatsoever. And it crushed me, clearly crushed me. And I remember walking out of that student advisory meeting thinking, oh, wait, my dream is over? And I remember getting kind of angry and thinking, you didn't look far enough. You didn't seek out what was here. And it made me very determined. Mm-hmm. And I think that sin, it wasn't really a sin in a sense, but it really got me going. And I was very determined.
Good for you.
I'll prove you wrong.
Good for
I'll
her.
prove you wrong.
Good for you. Good
yes.
For you.
Yes.
And the next question is, what sin do you most enjoy committing?
Oh. Well, are the sins that we commit, are they really sins? Are they really sins? God? Or are they just part of the human experience?
Well, depends on how you look at it. That's
yeah. I do love my wine, I have to say. I love wine.
What's your favorite?
I'll tell you a sin that I do love committing, and I have to watch it. and particularly when I'm with some of my friends, I'm a bit of a disher. I like to gossip a bit, and gossip can be hurtful.
Mm-hmm.
But as Andrew Reynolds and I like to say, if it's the truth, it's not gossip.
Okay.
Okay, but that's not really true. I mean, gossip is gossip. But as we used to say, well, if it's the truth, then it's really not gossip. But, I do like to dish, and I have to watch it, So that's a bit of a sin that I have to really temper.
Okay.
Yes.
What is the one thing that you'd most like to be forgiven for?
Oh, well, I think that the fact that I can be a pretty caustic. I have a caustic tongue sometimes. Sometimes I'll say something that I know is funny, but it might be hurtful. And I really have to watch that, because when you have a sort of comic mind, you're going like, oh, I could get a laugh there,
Mm-hmm.
but it might not be the right laugh. It might be a hurtful laugh. So I have to watch that. So that's the one thing that I try to really, sometimes go, shut that gate. Yeah, you might have something funny to say here. It might hurt someone's feelings. So don't say it.
Okay. That's great.
I have to watch myself.
Right. Okay. What have you come closest? When have you come closest to meeting the devil?
Oh. I was married very young. I've been married twice. I was married very young. That marriage did not last. And after that marriage ended, I became a single woman. I was a very free-spirited single woman. I met the devil a lot. I met the devil quite a few times.
Oh, wow.
And the devil was fun quite a few times. But I have to say that it was let's put it this way. It was a very freewheeling year after I got my divorce, and it was a lot of fun. But at a certain point, even the devil takes its toll, and you have to say, you know what, this lifestyle is a little too rough. And I'm so glad that, and also remember, this was the 80s. The 80s was the time when suddenly there was something in the world called AIDS.
That's right.
And you had to be pretty crazy to not be safe.
That's right.
So I got safe. And before this, I would say the devil was tempting.
I think a lot of us did.
Yes.
So what is the truest example of compassion that you have ever witnessed?
Oh, well, I'm going to get really weepy now. When my late husband was really, really dying, he was going to the hospital a lot. He would be getting infections. He would have blood pressure issues. The kidneys were not working well. I mean, when your body starts breaking down, it's hard, and you end up in the hospital a lot. And I have to say, the nurses and PAs and the doctors at New York Presbyterian up at 168th Street in New York City, they got to know us very, very well. And you just would not believe how kind and giving and of their time. These are busy people. They're very busy. And they always, because they had taken care of Ralph for over 10 years.
Wow.
And just the little things, the people registering us in, the people, and they would always stop in, Mr. Howard, we're bringing you this, or Mr. Howard, we're bringing you the New York Times today. Mr. Howard, we want to make sure you're having a better cup of coffee. They knew we loved his coffee. Mr. Howard, I was inspired all the time by those workers. That's why with the COVID situation, when they talk about hospital workers, I'm telling you, I've witnessed it. They're working so hard. So I would just urge everyone, please know these people are on the front lines. So that was, and then inspired me all the time. They were great. They checked in with us all the time.
That's amazing. God bless them. Who is the person that you know with the purest soul?
Wow. Well, my stepdaughter Lindsay is really up there. I have to tell you, she's kind of my idol. I have to say, Lindsay Howard Masterson. I'm just
God
crazy for her, and the purest soul. I got to tell you, I have 12 grandchildren. I know that's when your viewers say, you can't possibly be a grandmother. And I appreciate that. I have 12 grandchildren. They're really amazing. They like me. They actually like me. They're really pure souls. They're just wonderful people. And they're very protective of Grandma Jules. And I'm very grateful. So I would say my grandchildren and all my stepchildren. But I'm very close to Lindsay, and she was very helpful to me, and as was my stepdaughter Nicole and Noelle and Nathan and Jillian. But Lindsay lives in Connecticut, and she came down a lot. But yeah, I would say my grandchildren are pure souls, and they're just full of light, and so I would say them.
That's great. Who is the person most loyal to you? And that may be Lindsay as well.
Well, it was Ralph. I mean, my late husband was just a remarkable husband to me, and he really helped me in so many ways. He was not only my husband, but he was also like my mentor. And he was tough on me, believe me. He could be Mama Rose-ish. Let me tell you a story. There's a little Mama Rose-ish, but I'll tell you, he really was such a big supporter. He was really diminishing, and he was dying, quite frankly. And he was in the hospital at one point before he came home. And I was doing Tootsie. I was rehearsing Tootsie. And we were supposed to go to Chicago because, you go out of town when you do a Broadway show. Not always, but a lot of the time. We were scheduled to go out of town. And I was so frightened of his health situation. I actually thought about quitting the show, and because I wanted to take care of him, and I didn't know if I could go to Chicago, and I was trying to figure it all out. So I said to Ralph, and he was lying back, and he was very weak. I said, Ralph, maybe I shouldn't go to Chicago and do Tootsie. Maybe I need to tell Scott I shouldn't do this. It was like Mama Rose. He suddenly gathered all his strength. He got up. He looked at me. And I mean, his eyes were focused. He said, you're getting on that plane if it's the last thing you or I do in our lives. You're going to Chicago. And then he just sat back. I'm telling you, Richard, I get the hair is standing in the back. It chilled me. And it was almost as if he was saying, da 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 da. I mean, you could hear the music in the background. Light the lights. And I got on that plane. And here's the thing. He passed away right before we went to Chicago.
Wow.
Passed away on August 7th. We had his funeral service on August 12th. And 8 days later, I was on that plane to Chicago. Timing.
God bless him. God bless you. Julie, I love you so much. I've always admired.
What a wonderful way to start this day.
To start this month, don't go anywhere for a minute. I want to thank everybody that tuned in today. I know that I can speak for Julie when I say this, and I never want to speak for Julie, but in this instance, I will. Those of us who do what we do, we never take it for granted that you could be anywhere else when you spend a little time with us. So thank you for spending an hour with us. If this is your first time at Richard Skipper Celebrates, my hope is that you will hit that little button on YouTube that says join the celebration. I got rid of the word subscribe because you're more than a subscriber to me. That's a faceless word that I don't like. And you mean more than that. So join the celebration.
I love it.
Thank you. I have done this with over 320 other people prior to Julie. And God willing, there'll be 320 more. If you had a great time today, hit the like button, leave a comment, and share this through YouTube. What this will do is this will raise the ranking of this show. I always end every show by telling everyone to go out and do something nice for somebody else without expecting anything in return. Go to your Facebook friends list, and the first name that pops up, reach out with a phone call. Not an email message, not a text message, not a private inbox message, a phone call. Because as our dear friend David Friedman always says, we're all in this together, but we're not in the same boat. And I always say, if you're going to go out in a boat, make sure you bring a skipper along. Now I'm going to leave the screen, and I'm going to give Julie, you've got the final word. Anything that you want to say about anything that we talked about today that you want to build upon, anything that we didn't talk about that you wish we had, or just any message that you want to put out to anyone who's watching right now, you've got the final word. Don't worry about how to end it, because as soon as you get the goodbye, I will end the show. I want to thank you for the gifts that you've given to the world and that you're going to continue to give the world. Go and see her, in Fairy Cakes right now. Julie, I absolutely love you. Tony Award winner.
Tony Award winner. There we are.
There it is.
Thank you, Richard. This has been a real pleasure. You're an absolute doll. And you know what? My final words are, say yes. I always say yes. Until no is the only way to go. But say yes. Be grateful. Be grateful. Say yes. Join the celebration. I had so much fun with Richard. And he's also one of the great lights in New York City. So join the celebration. Say yes. Be grateful. Be kind.